Welcome to Justice Matters. I'm Denise George, Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Justice Matters is a program aimed to inform, engage, and empower you with knowledge of Virgin Islands laws that affect our everyday lives and our community, with insightful discussions with special guests on the laws and related topics so you can be empowered to make a difference in our community. Today's topic is part 2 of human trafficking, the crime that hides in plain sight. This time, we'll talk about the law enforcement, police response in combating these crimes, investigation, arrests, prosecutions, joined by my special guests from the Virgin Islands Police Department, which has for years joined with federal law enforcement authorities to combat human trafficking and end the criminal exploitation of people for sex and forced labor right here in the Virgin Islands. They will let you know how even you can help to be a part of the solution. It starts with knowledge. Basically, there are 2 types of human trafficking under the laws. We focus on the local and federal laws, and those 2 types are sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Sex trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to trap a person into prostitution or, other words, commercial sex activity against their free will. In other words, essentially being sold for sex. Labor trafficking, or forced labor, involves the unlawful use of force, threat, fraud, or coercion to make a person perform some kind of labor or service, also known as modern-day slavery. When it involves minors, force, fraud, or coercion is never a factor. Just engaging a minor in commercial sex activity or forced labor makes the crime. Traffickers take advantage of people's vulnerabilities and they use violence, manipulation, false promises of well-paying jobs or even romantic relationships to entice and trap and exploit their victims, forcing them to provide labor and other services as sex workers or other jobs with little or no pay, sometimes to pay off an insurmountable debt that can never really be fully paid. Local and federal investigators and prosecutors have been enforcing federal human trafficking laws for many years, but our local human trafficking laws are relatively new, enacted in 2018. To summarize, under local laws, there are 3 main types of human trafficking crimes: sexual servitude and forced labor, and also patronizing a minor or victim of human trafficking. A person commits the crime of sexual servitude by making a minor available to engage in commercial sexual activity or prostitution, or by using coercion or deception to compel an adult to engage in commercial sexual activity. In other words, sexual activity for which money or anything of value is given to, promised, or received by a person. Sexual servitude involving a child is punishable by a minimum of 30 years to life in prison and a maximum $100,000 fine. Sexual servitude involving an adult carries a penalty of a minimum of 30 years and a maximum of 50 years in prison. Generally, a person commits the crime of forced labor by using coercion to compel a person to provide labor services. Coercion involves the use of force, abduction, fraud, threat of death or bodily harm, intimidation, debt control, or manipulation to trap a person into providing those labor or sex services to profit the trafficker. Now, while it may look on the outside to be a normal job or a chosen occupation, the victims are actually being controlled and under threat of harm, fear, or intimidation. Forced labor is punishable by imprisonment of up to 30 years and or a maximum of $25,000 fine if the victim is an adult, and if the victim is a minor, up to 30 years imprisonment and a fine of not more than $40,000. What about the persons who purchase or pay to receive the services? Well, under Virgin Islands law, knowingly patronizing a victim of sexual servitude or engaging and patronizing a minor for commercial sexual activity by agreeing to give anything of value to anyone in exchange for engaging in sexual activity with that victim or minor are also crimes under Virgin Islands law, punishable by imprisonment of up to 10 years if the victim is an adult and up to 20 years of imprisonment if the victim is a minor. The laws are on the books, but it is the enforcement of these laws that make all of the difference. VI, Police Department, and federal law enforcement agencies have joined together in combating sex and labor trafficking in the Virgin Islands for years. Let me give you some examples from the headlines. Feds free 7 human trafficking victims in a raid on a St. Thomas guest house. Epstein used VI tax breaks to help fund child sex trafficking. Man who sold teen for sex sentenced. St. Thomas nightclub operator sentenced for human trafficking. Sex trafficker facing a 60-year sentence. Gerard pleads guilty in sex trafficking case. Woman charged with sex trafficking of a minor, a 13-year-old. Lawsuit claims human trafficking and forced labor in a hurricane repair program. Jeffrey Epstein, billionaire, VI Island owner, arrested for sex trafficking children. Unfortunately, it continues. That's why I'm so glad to have joining us on Justice Matters Lieutenant Bridget Conow of the Virgin Islands Police Department. She is a commander of the Criminal Intelligence Unit, as well as Deputy Chief Stephen Phillips. Welcome to Justice Matters. Tell me, Lieutenant Conow, based on your observations in law enforcement, how long has human trafficking been a problem here in the Virgin Islands?
I think human trafficking has been existing in the Virgin Islands longer than law enforcement would want to admit it has been, or even longer than our society, our communities would want to admit it's been happening.
What kind of human trafficking do you see in the Virgin Islands?
Based on my experience, I've learned that there is sex trafficking, there is labor, trafficking for labor purposes, and I've even learned recently there is also domestic trafficking for servitude purposes.
What do you mean by domestic servitude?
An individual that either migrated here or was smuggled here, and they are now employed by someone in a house, in a home, hence domestic, and the owner or the person that employs them will take their documents. They are not free to leave. They will be they work there, and they work almost continuously. They're not free to go out by themselves and do different things. And they are also threatened that they might be deported if they do not comply.
How does it go on for so long undetected?
AG, I think it has to do something with the perception and the culture. I think that people do not recognize it when they see it. And for some people, it might be understood that this is how things work. That's why I said culture. And I say we as a people may see it, not being aware of what it is, and we may call it something else.
How does human trafficking look like something else?
If you learn about what human trafficking is, and you learn that fraud, and you learn that coercion or fear is involved, then you know it's human trafficking. We have situations here locally. For example, I'm going to talk about something first that a lot of people may not even talk about. I'm going to talk about construction workers. So we have construction workers that are here. A lot of them may be here illegally, and they might be hired for a job and paid less than the minimum wage. And that is considered trafficking for labor. Okay. Now, we may have a situation where sometimes they might even work and not get paid. And they might be threatened that if they go to the police, what's going to happen? They're going to find out you're here illegally and you're going to get deported. So they might not want to go to the police. So we see something like that we say, you know, professionally, a professional person might say that's a labor dispute. Another individual will say, you know, the man hire you for a job and he cheats you. But if you understand what human trafficking is, that's also human trafficking.
Let's talk more now about sex trafficking of minors.
I was a youth investigator for quite some time in juvenile, and actually it starts in the school. You see children acting out. You want to know why they're acting out. And you have that conversation. Some of them are here probably undocumented for a period of time because the parents are here undocumented. And of course, we cannot tell them they can't go to school. So they are in school, but they're undocumented and they have the hardship. So when you see certain children acting out, and you do your investigation and you find out, okay, this is the reason why and stuff. So now we have to get other entities involved to assist. If it's social services, HSI, who entity need to get involved to help, because sometimes the children are, as the lieutenant said, they're being sold for sex, especially girls and also boys. A lot of young boys also being sold for sex also, right here in this territory.
And then we have situations where a parent might decide that their daughter could have this person as a boyfriend. And this is how we do things. And the boyfriend give the mother stuff, give the mother money, give the mother gifts, buy things for the daughter. And the daughter is doing it because of at the mother's direction. Maybe it's not something she may want to do if she's an adult, and then that becomes human trafficking. We do have cases like that in the Virgin Islands. We have cases where a boyfriend may traffic his girlfriend. We had cases where a business may traffic the employee. The employee may have migrated here in the Virgin Islands or was smuggled in. And even if a person is smuggled in, it doesn't become a human trafficking case until the force and the fraud and the coercion comes in and you can't leave and you don't have the freedom everybody else has. And it escalates like that.
But how do you detect it?
You may see a person that looks a little bit intimidated. You may see a person that constantly have a guardian, someone walking behind them, someone watching them. They're not really free. They might have that expression on their face of concern and of fear.
What are some of the indicators?
So listed here in the Homeland Security Investigation brochure, here are some of the common indicators to help recognize human trafficking. Does the person appear fearful, anxious, depressed, submissive, tense, nervous, or paranoid? Does the person appear disconnected from family, friends, community organizations, or houses of worship? Is the person under 18 and is providing commercial sex acts? Does the adult engaging in commercial sex industry have a pimp, manager, or controlling partner? Is the person in control of his or her own money, identification documents, and personal possessions? Is the person free to come and go from work and home as she or he chooses? Are there unreasonable security measures at his or her work or home? Has the person been threatened with harm if he or she attempts to leave a situation, including threats to loved ones and threats of deportation? So that's so important because, a lot of times people are threatened not just for their person, but their families from wherever they came from are also threatened. Does a person work excessively long and or unusual hours? Is he or she unpaid, paid very little, or only paid through tips? Is he or she not allowed breaks or suffers under unusual restrictions at work? Was the person recruited for one job and forced to engage in some other job? Does the person owe a large debt and is restricted in how he or she is able to pay it off? Is the person not allowed or able to speak for themselves? And that's important. Does another person insist on being present or translating? That's also important.
Why is that so important?
If you can't answer for yourself, that means somebody else is controlling your narrative. And if someone else is controlling your narrative and you are capable of answering for yourself, but under the circumstances you can't, I think that's a very loud signal that something is wrong.
Are there some signs to spot recruiters?
An individual of any age or gender appears to be watching and approaching youth and systematically trying to befriend strangers, promoting modeling agencies, travel crew, employment, talent search, websites, or other employment. You hear a lot of people saying, you should be a model, and you should come. You have to pay attention to the details behind it, because once again, locally based on perception, maybe the girl might start to feel, well, he just thinks I'm pretty and he just likes me and now he wants to spend time with me. And, it escalates and escalates.
What kind of other indicators are there for recruiters?
Youth in the possession of motel keys, cards, lots of cash, prepaid credit cards. We also had another situation where an adult male was engaged in, right here in St. Thomas, was engaged in sexual activity with some minors, and their cell phones were paid for. The parent knew what was happening. They were given money. They were given a use of a vehicle. So their behavior was benefiting the parent and their living situation. So the parent saw it as a benefit and not as trafficking for children.
How does a case or an investigation begin into human trafficking?
It starts with a report. Somebody have to say something, or somebody have to observe something. So you're going to have where perhaps an individual as a civilian, not law enforcement, they recognize something that is suspicious to them. They call an agency and say, hey, I'm not sure if this is happening, but this looks suspicious to me. For example, a school might call and say, I have this student coming to school, but their attendance is terrible. They're missing too many days. There's something going on. That person might very well be somebody that needs to be looked into, because it just might be that something in the home is happening as to why this child is not in school. And if you take that and you couple it with an investigation where you see bruises or you see that fear and intimidation, and you interview the individual, then we are able to subtract from the situation and then see what is really happening there.
What is Operation Stone Guarding?
I know I began this and I said that I'm the commander for the Criminal Intelligence Unit, but I'm also the lead for Operation Stone Guarding. And Operation Stone Guarding is a FEMA-funded program that's a collaboration of Custom, Border, and Protection and the Virgin Islands Police Department. So what I do with Operation Stone Guarding, what we all do here in the Virgin Islands Police Department throughout the territory, is that we do border inspections. And the reason why we do these border inspections is to observe if there's any criminal activity there, any illegal entries, any terrorism, any criminal activity that might be on a transnational organization level. And we intend to interrupt that and stop that. And now it might sound like I'm talking about something different other than human trafficking when I say stone guarding and I say border patrols. But in actuality, a lot of our victims, they come in through the border. Some people have people that they contact right here in St. Thomas, right in St. Croix, right in St. John, that they are coming. And perhaps someone paid the bill for them to travel. In learning about what's happening here with human trafficking, I have learned that people are charged from $5,000 to $150,000, depending on where they're coming from. So that's a bill to pay off. You get a person and then they get into to working to pay that bill off. And maybe at first it's okay that they can work and pay the bill off. Maybe they just have to work and pay the bill off and they leave. But a lot of times the employer the employer at times will take advantage of the situation further and have free labor, or they'll have the person involved in sexual activity to pay the bill. And then after a while, it would seem to some that the bill is never paid.
What happens when they want to leave?
I believe that the few cases that we've had here, when they're investigated, because things like that comes out in the investigation, in the in-depth investigation as to what's going on. It's hardly, and Deputy Chief, you could correct me, it's hardly the case that you get to talk to somebody and they immediately say, hey, I can't do this anymore. This is what I'm doing. And my family was threatened. That's hardly the case, because they have a trust factor with the law enforcement person that they're talking to. They have a trust issue. They don't want to be deported. They don't want to be harmed. So they don't know who to trust. And you're talking about a criminal organization that may have been doing this, a transnational criminal organization that is probably coupled with other transnational criminal organization and has probably been doing this not for the first time, the second time, or the third time.
So, Detective Phillips, what happens at the border?
Most of the individuals we're seeing coming from St. Martin and Antigua area, coming out from the Caribbean, wherever they're coming from. And they pay that large amount of monies, the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to the boat captains, and they have to pay it off. And most of the time when we encounter individuals that come through here to the Virgin Islands, they have a point of contact. They even have telephone numbers, who to meet and who will take care of them. We ask them, how they get here. They tell you straight up, they tell you, I came from St. Martin, I bought a ticket, I was living in that area for a period of time, and I want to go up north to have a better living for myself and for my family. And most of the time they have family here already, or they have a contact person all the time that it's a business for them.
What would you say is the first course of action if you suspect someone is a victim of sex trafficking or labor trafficking?
Do not approach the employers or the situation yourself. Make a call and report what you think you're seeing, and call 911, call the 800 number, the national number, or the Homeland Security investigation number. Is there any training in law enforcement, or even for citizens who want to identify the situation and learn how to handle the situation and help a victim? The information that I received, learning more about human trafficking, suggests the same thing, that the person should make a call and report it and let law enforcement handle the situation, because it might appear to just be one single individual that one individual may be trying to help, and it may look really innocent and really simple, and that one little person might be working for a transnational organization that is very serious about their business, and now they put themselves in jeopardy as well. So calling 911 is the first step call to police to get help? Report it. And, like I said before, the internet is a great resource. The general public can look things up on the internet to find out more about human trafficking. They can look at possible indicators. They can assess things themselves, but they need to call law enforcement to get involved. Are the police at the VIPD getting the necessary human trafficking awareness training to respond to such a call? We do have online trainings that we do put up for our law enforcement officers. Basically, we have our training academy, our training officer in charge, that she, when we ask for something, she actually, especially with human trafficking, we actually let our officers get involved in those type of training so they can identify those areas of human trafficking. One thing I want to talk about too, also to Lieutenant, you hit on the nail, also to the internet. I see it as a blessing and a curse. I know also too, people also go on the internet and prey on victims. They have websites that they utilize, backpage.com. It was one of those sites that was actually hit by the federal entity to shut it down, because that's where they were finding what human trafficking. They were meeting people, and individuals was calling these individuals and getting these individuals off of this webpage, backpage.com. Also too, we have these dating sites also too. Mm-hmm. Those are also sites that they utilize also to
lure young ladies in and young boys in also too. One of the websites is those Badu's, Christian Mingles. They utilize those websites to try to locate those victims.
So basically what you're saying, they use the internet as a form of recruitment to lure in victims, taking their passport, IDs, travel documents, almost like deconstructing their identity, and then they keep it until they do what they want. That's coercion. What can you do to protect from being victimized?
For our personal safety, if we could just express caution in something sounds too good to be true. The guy is saying, don't worry about it. I just met you, but you're such a beautiful person and you shouldn't be going through this. Let me pay a cell phone bill for you. Don't worry about it. And if you're still in trouble tomorrow, meet me over here. You know, it sounds so good. He saw the beauty in my heart and now he's going to pay my bill and he's offering, this is beautiful. This is just like a romantic book or something on TV. And this is how my knight in shining armor comes into my life. No. You don't know the person. That's the reality of the situation.
What would you say to our community, to members of our community from a law enforcement perspective regarding human trafficking?
I think we should learn to be our brother's keeper a little bit more. I think that we ought to be more aware of our surroundings and take our responsibility, our personal responsibility more seriously. And we have to be able to report. The Fusion Center has a campaign that the police department has repeated for years. If you see something, say something, say something. If you know something, say something. If you don't want to talk to a person, call an 800 number, call 911, say something. We cannot address the ills in our community without the help of our community.
Thank you so much for joining us on Justice Matters. You have certainly enlightened us, both of you, Lieutenant Bridget Conow and Deputy Chief Stephen Phillip.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now remember, if you're a victim of human trafficking or if you suspect that a person is a victim of human trafficking, please remember to call 911. We'll get you straight to law enforcement. You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888 and text at 233-733. Or you can call Homeland Security at 1-866-347-2423. The following hotlines are available 24/7, and that's at the Women's Coalition at 340-773-9272. Also, the Family Resource Center, and that's 340-776-7867. Thank you so much for joining us on Justice Matters.